Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. How's everybody doing? This week sucks. Like, trying to feel like crap. I'm trying to get over a head cold. It has not progressed to anything other than that. So I'm just trying to get over it. I'm trying to get out to practice tomorrow. Go see everybody. I didn't go out yesterday. I've been feeling like crap. I want to stay away from everybody. I don't want to be blamed for any hardships. So I'm staying away. I'm staying away from you. You got a long week. Yeah. I'm staying away from everybody. You got a long week. You got, the 10 o'clock pup drops or later or something. So, you're probably feeling it by now.
Yeah, today's the I'm starting to lose my mind a little bit because 10:30 puck drop last night, another 10 o'clock tonight. Today's also the day I'm supposed to run, which I did do, but it's just like it's all stacking up to just be chaos, essentially, is what happened. So I'm feeling it.
I love working in sports. Yeah, I love working in sports, but you have weeks like this where you're like, it doesn't stop, and you can't ever say no, because if you say no, someone else says yes, and then you're out of a job. So Right. So I'm just trying to get through my little head cold thing, and then I'll be fine. I know what I mean. I'll jack myself up with whatever I need to jack myself up with to be ready for Sunday. Right. I'm hoping I'll feel fine by Sunday morning anyway. I'm still a few days away, but I just feel like crap, and I'm still dealing with it all
week.
What
are the remedies? What are you doing to try to fix it lately?
Nothing abnormal. I'm taking. I just have like a head cold or some kind of mild virus. Like I don't know. Like so. I'm just like, drinking tea, taking all the medicines to, sleeping, just trying to sleep a lot. Yeah. I'm just tired, sleep a lot. And then the good news is the bye week's next week. So, I'll catch up. So I'll be fresh as a daisy by the time we get around to that Rams game. So
we didn't talk about Dolphins Hard Knocks, but you just said something that activated what I saw.
I forgot to watch that. That was my homework assignment. I forgot to watch that.
Tonight, man. There is a scene because the Dolphins played on Black Friday last week, where. Who did they beat before? They beat
the Raiders.
The Raiders, yes, at home. So they had to practice on Monday because it's a short week. And McDaniel is doing the breakdown of the Monday practice, and he's going, guys, we're getting out of here early. The only reason we're letting you out of here early today is because I need you to go home and sleep. He was like, the only statistic that tells me that you will play better on Friday is if you get sleep. And he's like, that is the priority this week. And I was like, wow, that is a not old school head coach, someone that knows what they're talking about. And he was like, I don't care what happens. Take care of what you need to take care of. Go home and sleep. You have to, or we're not going to be good on Friday. And of course, they killed the Jets on Friday.
Since you bring it up, I haven't really, it's funny. I watched the Hard Knocks in the summer. I've seen some things from the Colts and the Cardinals the last couple of years because they've done it, but I haven't really, I don't know. I'm just like, it's not on my radar in general. And then last year, after the fact, after the Colts one, I watched because it was Wentz. Right. And I only watched it after the fact because I wanted to see, what insight could I get because he's going to be the quarterback here. So I watched the series after it was over, not during. And then you reminded me, and now you brought it up again, since we're playing Miami, I probably should watch these first couple episodes of this.
You should.
So what have you seen from the Dolphins so far?
One, McDaniel is as advertised. He's kind of like, you could tell he's I don't want to call him the focal point, but you can tell he's the most entertaining part of the show. And he comes across, not that I don't think we doubted this, he comes across so relatable to players. He's a part of this kind of new wave of some teams need a younger head coach that can relate to them and talk them through some things, but he treats every player like every other player, if you know what I mean. Like, he treats Tua and Tyreek the same as every other player on the roster. He had a really funny quote on Jalen Ramsey because they obviously traded for him in the offseason, and he was like, that guy was my least favorite player to game plan against. I hated against it. And he goes, and what I can control? I can control trading forms. I never have to play him again. So that was a really funny moment where he was talking about getting Jalen Ramsey, who, of course, balled out his first game against the Raiders. I think he had 2 interceptions in that game. I think he's got 3 on the season or 4 on the season already. But, yeah, he comes across as basically the star. They haven't gone in depth with Tua yet, but Tua comes across really well, especially in the quarterback room. You can tell he's a leader. Like, they've got their guy. He comes across really well. I don't know enough about Tua, to be completely honest. Obviously, I saw him at Bama, but it's apparent he's the franchise guy. And then they actually the first player they follow going home is Tyreek. And Tyreek's funny, like, he talks kind of about the same things Terry McLaurin talked about in the offseason when he was talking about his mental health. He was saying he had trouble separating his work life from coming home. So he's learned now to kind of leave it at the door, and he's like trying to get his real estate license. His wife is also getting her real estate license. So they're already planning for whenever he's done that they're going to be in real estate. So
didn't he say he was going to be a porn star? Didn't he say that?
Clearly, I think he was joking when he said that, since he married his fiance during the bye week, by the way.
Got it.
That happened. Yeah. So like they were engaged for 2 years, according to the show, and then got married during the bye week. So he's had a big season overall. McDaniel has awesome quotes on him too. He's like, if you're not talking in the third person in the post game press conference, I haven't done my job right today. It's like what he said to Tyreek. Like,
that's funny.
Yeah, like you can tell the interaction between all all of them.
So they're having fun. They're having fun.
It's a tight knit group.
You're saying.
You can tell it's a really tight knit group. And as I said yesterday, with Chubb and Phillips is who got hurt, right? Their edge rusher. They did the whole entire, like I said, tug at the heartstrings. Those guys were buddy, and then they show Phillips getting hurt, and like I said, he's mic'd up for that moment, and it's pretty gut wrenching because the realization within like 2 or 3 minutes of him knowing that his season's over with, and he's having the best season he's ever had, essentially. And you could tell too, like it affected the team. Like McDaniel said something about it in the locker room after the victory, and a couple other things, but overall, like, I'm actually very entertained by it, and I will keep watching even after we play them because I think McDaniel comes across as just a really good guy in the NFL. And if I'm just like throwing my opinion in there, they have the tight-knit type of group that wins championships. Like, you can tell the chemistry is there with all of them. And
okay. Because I haven't watched this yet. Right. But I'm telling you what I watch on film. I'm going to reiterate that.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Cool. But like you can tell they all genuinely like each other. They're all rooting for each other. The Chubb and Phillips thing too. They were saying they both had trouble before this season kind of staying up for a 17, 18-week season, and they were relying on each other this season that, like, hey, if you're down this week, I need to pick you up, and if I'm down this week, you need to pick me up. Like I said, it was a really good dynamic, and then I'm trying to think there was, like, one other moment that I can't remember what I was going to reiterate on it, but either way, they have the type of chemistry where, like, ooh, if they get hot here and offense starts clicking at another pace that we saw early in the season, they're going to be right there with anyone else they play in the AFC. So, I genuinely enjoy watching it, so I'm definitely going to keep watching, as it goes on.
I think you just mentioned something I think is underrated, and more that I'm around it, the more I realize, and our organization still, we got to get a winning team first before we can start talking about, is this an 18-week team?
Right.
And is this a team that can play into January? I mean, like, the first things first, you got to get into a competitive spot where you're talking about being in the playoffs in the first place, which this team has had a hard time finding its way to get around to. But I agree where Miami is not to be trusted yet is they clearly have a very good team. They have a very good roster.
Yep.
They are very, very well coached. Like I make fun of this guy all the time, but in watching them on film, it is hard not to like what you see.
His attention to detail is crazy. It's
obvious when you rewatch them play. Like, it's pretty darn obvious, and there clearly is accountability. Like, I'll even point out a couple moments I've seen on film where Jalen Waddle was hitting himself in the helmet for, I mean, not missing a block, but like being off by by a touch. And a run didn't go for an extra yard or two, and he's hitting himself in the helmet because he knew he made a mistake, and it was like a really minor mistake. Like one of those things where you're like, oh, okay. So, like, if these guys are this locked in for this stuff, all these little nuanced stuff, then they're dangerous. And like, I've watched a little bit of, not enough of them to give you a full review yet. I'm going to do that tomorrow, but like, I'll say this about them early. This would be I think they could win a championship. That'd be the first thing I would say about them. I think it's a lot like Philadelphia, where they are amazing, differently, but amazing at running the ball, actually.
Yeah.
That's where they are extraordinarily dangerous, is running the ball. They look at times almost like a military academy, where they have all these different formations with all these people going in motion. And if you can't figure out the direction the ball is going, it's too late. And they hit you with speed on these edges, and they're executing really well. So eventually, all these plays turn into 6, 8, and more yard plays. They hit you with attrition. They actually don't throw the ball downfield very much, which is the thing that I have a pause about them, because that's where I wonder. And I think the more I'm watching Tua, the more I wonder if he has to make a big throw down the field. Can he do it, and can he be trusted to do it? Right. He's got the guys to do it, but can he do it? Can he be trusted to do it? Because frankly, the vast majority of the offense is 5 yards and in. The ball's out of his hands almost immediately, and it's all in the setup and the execution of the plays. And that's where I'm concerned this weekend. I mean, obviously our defense has struggled mightily, and losing assignments on these guys or getting caught in misdirection, these guys are going to turn 5-yard plays into 40-yard gains. Like, that's what I'm worried about here. Like, you miss the edge on Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, they're gone. Right. You don't have edge contain off guard on Raheem Mostert, he's gone. So, like, that's the problem when you play. Like, their players are all capable, almost all of them to a man. All of them are capable of turning these 5-yard plays into long gains. This is kind of what I had hoped I would see from our offense, that we could turn people like McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel, because they have the same, not Tyreek Hill speed, but they have the same ability that if caught in space in a creative manner and the play executed correctly, they could be the Dolphins, like the way that they run this.
Right.
And the Dolphins are very good at this stuff. The larger question that I would have is, when push comes to shove and they play a team that can score like them, if they are behind and they can't just kind of maneuver their way down the field, because they're very good at executing all of these 5 to 7 yard plays, and they get these second and shorts constantly, and then you're in trouble with them because you don't know what they're going to do. They're moving people around. They have a lot of viable targets, and Tua is very accurate on these very short plays. So you get in trouble. It's like the Eagles. They every down and distance becomes 2nd and 5 or shorter, and then what are you going to do against them? Like, they at that point they could do anything, and all it takes is you making a mistake on defense and they got you. Miami's very similar that way. But what I don't see, especially in recent weeks, and maybe they haven't had to do a lot of it, but they are incredible at ball control. They're incredible at popping off some of these plays. But what they don't seem to show is necessary ability to be explosive over the top if they have to. But that's just recently. So that's probably why they've lost to the better teams. They can control the ball, but when push comes to shove, and if something goes wrong, can they get big yardage fast? And I think they're extremely capable of it, but their offense isn't structured that way. So that's my only holdup on them. The Jalen Phillips thing is a big deal, and the metrics of them on defense, and this is why I think they're actually potentially a Super Bowl team. The metrics on defense with them have changed exponentially since the first month. Yep. One, Vic Fangio's an outstanding coordinator. Two, they have a very, very good team. Like, you might not know who Christian Wilkins is, but he might as well be Allen or Payne. Like, he's had those kind of impacts on games. They have stud players like Chubb, Howard, and Ramsey. Now that Ramsey has come back, since he's come back, since week 8, this is 5 full weeks now of the NFL. They have the best defense in the NFL, best third down percentage, best interception rate, and they have the best opponent quarterback rating. So they're getting scary good, actually. And like, they're heading in this direction where they're actually scary good. And so I am more and more thinking Ron Rivera picked a hell of a week to take over a defense, to take on this team. Because, like, most of the time you do it when you're either playing somebody who's not this or off of a bye week. Right. But I guess they had to do what they had to do. And man, did he pick an interesting week to try to do this. Because this team actually, I think if they are an 18-week team, which we don't know yet because they haven't proven to be that yet, they're dangerous, especially with the Bills probably not going to make the playoffs. The Bengals almost definitively not going to make the playoffs. I think, and they took the Chiefs down to the wire in a weird game in Germany. They took the Eagles down to the wire in a game they could have won. I know they lost these games, but they're right there. If Tua doesn't make a lot of mistakes, I actually think they might be the best team in the AFC right now.
So that's one thing you're touching on that Hard Knocks does touch on is they have had trouble with turnovers the last two games. Like Tua threw 2 interceptions in the final 2 minutes against the Jets last week. Yeah, and
one of them was a terrible one.
Yeah, yes, right. And so it's funny though. Like McDaniel, he literally goes right to him. He goes, "Forget about it. Like you got to keep moving on." And that's like one of the clips they show. And then the Dolphins actually went down and scored after both of those interceptions as well. So, yeah, like they go through that. You could tell, though, that was the focal point of like, yeah, the offense was rolling, but now they're having trouble with turnovers. But the defense is also bailing them out multiple times against both of those opponents. So, yeah, it's a good watch, though. It's an easy watch, by the way. Like,
I feel like, here's what I feel like with Tua and watching him lately. I feel like we're talking about Dak 4 years ago. Where
I agree with you on that.
He's clearly good enough to win. Clearly.
Right.
But will he make the plays that they have to have when they need it most? The plays that Allen makes, the plays that Mahomes makes, the plays that Burrow makes, the plays that Brady used to make, that Rodgers made. Like, that's where it's going to be, that's where they'll become unbeatable. Because when they do play the Chiefs in the playoffs, Mahomes will make some of those plays. And if you're not capable of making them yourself, then you can't keep up with them and you ultimately will lose. I don't care how well you execute or how well you play on defense. He does the things that puts his team over the top. What I don't see from Tua in general is those tendencies. But I also see an offense where he isn't asked to be Mahomes at all. I'm telling you, like every time he drops back, he puts his back foot in the ground, like almost takes this awkward back step and he's ready to throw it. And on both of those interceptions, when the read was off, that's when he got real jumpy and threw bad throws. So this offense is engineered for him to be very successful on first, second read, period, get rid of the ball immediately. Well, what happens when things go wrong?
Yeah.
And that's the big question, because a big turnover, this is Allen's problem, a big turnover against the right teams makes you lose even if you play really well. You cannot beat a team like the Eagles or the Chiefs in the playoffs if you make the big mistake. That team always overcomes it. Your team hasn't proven that you can. So it's not asking him to play perfectly, but he has to prove to me in the high leverage games that when it's necessary to make those type of plays, will he do it? And he's got no excuse with the skill position guys that he has. If that corner is turned and he becomes that, they look like what could be the best team in the NFL right now. So we'll see, we'll see. But that's the only question I have. And more, I'm hoping that if they play the way that they've played the last few weeks, which is they're really a very short yardage ball control looking to just pop a play off with some execution. That's why they don't score a ton of points like the last few weeks. Their drives are actually long and time consuming. That's why they're not scoring as much as they have been in early in the season. Now, against our defense, will they take more shots down the field if we don't have a pass rush and they have the receivers they have and we get lost in our secondary? Probably. So we might see a full arsenal from them this weekend. But if they play the way they've been playing, this game might end up being a little bit closer than you think. I'm hard pressed to believe that our defense is going to get itself together, even with the new voice, enough to limit them enough and not give up some big plays, especially on the edge or the misdirection that they run with. They're hard to figure. You got to figure out where the ball's going first, and it's hard to tell with them. That's where I think McDaniel actually is incredible. It's hard to tell off formation and motion where the ball is going, and I think that's his secret sauce, in my opinion. You don't know where the ball is going. You have to locate it fast, and if you don't, the problem is the guy who has it in his hands runs a 4.3. So you better figure it out fast.
Well, and I mean, the worst part about that is teams don't seem to do anything special to torch the Commanders' defense. And so,
well, that's what I'm saying.
So.
That's why it's hard to buy, even with this change, as much as I want to. Without them making a bunch of mistakes, it's hard to buy. That's why I said this is a hell of a week for Rivera to pick to do this.
Yeah, right.
Because he's going to flip some things around against a team that executes really, really well with high-speed caliber talent. Like this is going to be a heck of a test this weekend. One other thing I want to get to before the break, which is Mark Ein spoke at a panel today for, I think, Sports Business Journal called Deal Makers. And he was asked about the stadium today.
Yes.
And he did give, I wouldn't describe anything that he said as particularly newsworthy, but I do think it's worth pointing out this quote where he said this. I mean, we're looking. He goes, obviously, we're in a fortunate position. Any sports ownership group would feel good to have as many options as we do with 3 jurisdictions who would all love to welcome us. And so we're evaluating it, and they all have pros and cons. We're in the process of trying to figure that out. Now, that's not really newsworthy. Like, we all believe that all 3 jurisdictions are on the table. We know Maryland is. We know D.C. is trying to make it happen. It still is not eligible to occur because Congress still hasn't passed the bill to allow the city council to do what they please with it, which is the major step 1. We all think that's going to happen, but it actually hasn't happened yet. So we're waiting for that one to happen. But I point this out because he said all 3. Virginia's been so wishy-washy about the whole thing. It's not that I ever believed that they were off the table, but they certainly haven't been in the race like the other 2. So I thought it was interesting the way he phrased that, basically saying that they are very much in the mix. This is not really a 2-team race. So maybe Virginia, as I've kind of assumed, is the quiet one in the background, not making all the noise like Wes Moore or Muriel Bowser are, that they're sitting back here going, we're the ones that could financially incentivize you differently. You know that. We don't need to publicize it. And maybe that's what's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's also... It does benefit him to just say that there's 3 jurisdictions.
That's right.
Whether Virginia is actually really serious about it or not, for the other 2 to squirm a little bit. Like that's negotiations 101. You want to throw something out there that will make you go, oh, I didn't know that was the case. And let's be honest here too. Until there's pen to paper, everybody is in it. Like nobody is truly out of it. Virginia, if this takes a year or 2, could, turn things around and get their committee and get all their politicians together and say, oh, we do have a legitimate spot for you. And as I've said before, I don't know what that RFK site is worth. And there's going to be a monetary number attached to each jurisdiction and what each one brings to the table. And yeah, I'm not shocked he said that too. Like, Virginia also has never said they're out of the stadium business either. Like, as much as they have been kind of waffling, I guess is the word that I would use, they haven't said, oh, we're not going to do that. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that's the case. He just happened to say it out loud. And, that's negotiating as far as I'm concerned. For
yeah, it is negotiating. In the end, like, obviously the Commanders want to wait out the district having the ability to potentially seriously put RFK on the table, which they've clearly publicly stated they want to do, but they can't currently do it. Not until Congress acts on their behalf to give them the power to do so. We all expect that to happen, but who knows when? I mean, it's been dragging out, right? So we're waiting. Yeah. This is the interesting game. If for some reason Congress doesn't pass this bill, well, the district can't use the land for this purpose. Right. And then the Commanders have to decide, do we wait another election cycle or do we just solely negotiate with Maryland and Virginia? And obviously the leverage for both sides, while there is still 2, and that's important, is very different than if RFK is actually on the table.
Right.
So it's an interesting game that they have to play. And I know that you can't preemptively just say, well, DC, get your act together or we're not going to do it. You have to wait this thing out. But it is possible that Congress will not pass this. I think it will, but they may not. And if they don't, then all of a sudden we're down to 2. And at that point, I think things will ramp up fast because I can't imagine that they want to wait through. Here we are almost in 2024. Leases up in 4 years. You want to earmark a location, especially if you're breaking ground on a new stadium. You're not just redoing FedEx Field, which is what I don't think is going to happen. If you're looking to actually build literally from scratch a city/stadium or a city stadium, which is what most people do now, that's got to start soon. And I know you could just extend the lease and wait it out, especially if you're in Maryland and you're staying in the state. They'll, of course, extend the lease for you. Yeah. But I think the object's to get out of FedEx Field as fast as possible. And so that's got to happen soon. So I anticipate that things will occur soon. But I agree with you. There's not much there, but I think it was worth pointing out. He did not dismiss Virginia as being like
that's right.
not as interested as the others. They've just been extremely quiet about the whole thing.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah. And the other thing too, just to add like one more layer to all of it too, they probably also want to get this moving, twofold. Not only to get the stadium started, they also want to develop whatever's going to be on the FedEx field, the FedEx site too. Like my opinion, I've lamented that I think that's where the facility is going to go, and whatever we thought Commanderland is going to be, I think it's going to be there. That's just my straight up opinion. I've not heard that, but that's the other part of this too, is you have multiple sites you kind of got to develop, or as we've said too, they could sell off the Ashburn land as well, which is worth a crap ton of money too, which would be a cash influx to whatever they need to do. So it's not just one thing. It's like 3 different rotating parts for each jurisdiction, essentially. So, yeah, not shocked at all that he said that all 3 are still in, and that's just another layer to all of that.
I agree. Here's some breaking news from the Washington Post. I'm going to get to this next. The longtime manager of LeBron James has admitted to betting on NBA basketball with illegal bookies.
Oh, boy.
Oh boy. Back after this. Pray watch the show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. We start Throwback Thursday with the divorcees, Daryl Hall and John Oates, who are still, at last I heard, filing restraining orders against one another. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. That's Maneater, which came out in 1983. We're actually picking music that was on the charts on the week of the Super Bowl in 1983 because, of course, that was the Redskins' first ever Super Bowl championship, and they defeated the Miami Dolphins out in Pasadena, California. And, of course, it's Commanders and Dolphins this weekend at FedEx Field. And I had an argument not an argument. We had a robust conversation. Should we do 83 or 73? Mm-hmm. Because they played each other twice, obviously, in the Super Bowl. Miami's one and only perfect season, and the one and only perfect season since the Super Bowl era was the Miami Dolphins, and the final win was over the Redskins in the Super Bowl that year that they won 14-7. That was 1973. We chose 1983. I think try to be optimists here. That's the year the Redskins won their first championship and defeated Miami. But my argument a little bit was that this might, and granted, they were in the Super Bowl since 1973. This might be the best team that they've had since 1973 because they are top 7 defense, number 1 offense. They have the number 1 receiver, the number 2 running back. Tua's got metrics that are number 1 amongst a number of different categories, including most yards per game. So I don't know. They're kind of heading in this. Obviously, they're not undefeated and they haven't won anything yet, but the metrics actually scream that this might be the best team they've actually had since that undefeated team.
Just going to erase all of Dan Marino's career there, buddy? You're just going to erase every single year that he played?
I'm saying as a team.
Okay,
I'm not putting Tua in Dan Marino's category yet. But Dan Marino did play in one Super. He didn't play. He was not the quarterback in the 1983 Super Bowl that the Redskins won. That was David Woodley. Yeah. He did play in a Super Bowl shortly thereafter and lost to the San Francisco 49ers.
It's the
one and only.
I think it was the next year.
It's the one and only time Dan Marino played in a Super Bowl, and he's one of the all-timers that, it feels wrong that he never won. He's one of those. He's one of the small category of players across all sports that it's amazing. Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, John Stockton, of all-time greats that actually never won a championship. Dan Marino falls in that category for sure.
Yeah, definitely agree on that one. But, yeah.
Breaking news here. Wow, Washington Post's got a good one. How about this? I'm just going to read the blurb because they sent out basically we're breaking this.
Yep.
They are reporting Maverick Carter, the longtime manager and business partner of Lakers superstar LeBron James, has admitted to betting on NBA games through an illegal bookie. That's according to law enforcement records reviewed by the Post. He made the admission, now this is 2 years ago, made this admission in 2021 with federal agents who investigated a specific bookie who has since pled guilty to charges stemming from a role in running a sprawling offshore sports betting ring. Carter told his agents, quote, he could not remember placing any bets on the Lakers. So he admits that he bet on NBA games, but would not admit that he was either betting for or against the Lakers, which would be a big problem. Spokesman for Carter and James confirmed the interview did occur. But that's all they would say is that he did do this interview. They would not confirm or deny whether he actually made bets, but they confirmed he did the interview. This is a problem. Like, I know the NBA is going to try to brush this off, and I know that Maverick Carter doesn't play for an NBA team, and as far as I can tell, doesn't have any role in the Lakers organization or anybody in the NBA.
Right.
But his close connection to the most important player in the league and involved in illegal gambling, it's not good. Like, this is, and I don't know that there's anything you can necessarily do about it, but it's really bad. It's just a black eye. It really is. It's bad. And I know everyone's going to sit there and go, but it's legal to do it. I know, but even I'm not allowed to bet on football for good reason. Like, I'm not, because I know too much. And even what I know is a small amount of what's really to be known, but I know more than the average person, which is why I'm not allowed to do so. I'm not allowed to use that edge. Maverick Carter, by association with LeBron James, knows the in and outs of the Lakers. This is a problem. Like, and he did it illegally too. I don't know what the NBA is going to do about it, and they're going to try to brush this thing off, but this is a bad story that LeBron's going to have to deal with.
Yeah,
a bad one.
I was going to say, it does say it was before most of the states in D.C. were legalized, so the only way he could have done it was illegally, which raises questions, because if that's what he was doing back then, this is not unlike what happened with it was Ridley, right? That was on the Falcons that got popped for it and then traded.
Well, he was betting on football. That's right. It was it was supposedly a small amount of money, and it was supposedly was not on the Falcons, but still.
But at the end of the day, he was using an app, which the apps, you type in all of your information, and that gets flagged, I'm sure, because all the sports leagues are in cahoots with each other. On this case, too, he did this illegally in 2021. Who's to say he's not still doing it? Because you can't, everyone that's saying, oh, it's legal, whatever. No. The way he's going about it doesn't sound legal, because I would assume he's also on some kind of list where they would say, hey, knock it off. But if he's using a bookie that's not one of the major, big 4 or 5 brands or 6 brands, however there are anymore, that's a problem, because he could still be betting on it, and you can't really track it either. That's how do we know he hasn't been doing it for 3 straight years now, like that, or longer at that point?
I know the NFL rules because I'm technically an NFL employee, so I know what the gambling rules are for me. I don't know what they are for the NBA, but if I had to guess, if you do work for a team, whether you're player, staff, coach, whatever, training, whatever, you can't bet on the NBA. I'm going to assume that that's the case. That, I know that they're trying to figure out the rules for betting on college football or whatever, but I don't think you're allowed to. I would assume you're not allowed to bet on the NBA. Can they have a rule for people who are closely associated but are not technically employees of the league? Probably not. But this looks really bad. Who would know more about the internal workings of the Lakers than LeBron James's manager?
Right.
It's just a terrible, terrible look. I want to put aside the betting with the bookie part of it, because I know 8 million people who did that until it was legalized. So I'm not casting judgment on all that part of it, but I will cast judgment on just the idea of betting on NBA games when you are who you are, associated with who you're associated with, and knowing what you know about the inner workings of the league. Are you kidding? That's insider trading. You literally cannot do this.
Right.
So I don't know. I wonder, is LeBron going to be at least feel forced to disassociate himself? I don't know. This is a bad one. This is a really, really, really bad one.
He
can't defend it. He can't. Yeah. He cannot. If he tries to defend it, he's an idiot.
Right.
You can't defend this.
I guess he can deflect, though. He could say...
He can deflect it. He can't defend it,
yeah.
Which is right to do that. Yeah, sure. But then everyone thinks you're feeding him information about Lakers every night. You can't defend it.
Yeah. The only thing I could see is he deflects and says, I don't know what he does on his own time, and I was not aware of any of that, and that's probably the route he's going to go, is what my guess is going to be. And, I don't know what the follow-ups are on that of did you pass him information or whatever? And He's gonna have to skirt by that too and just say, "Oh, that's my work life" or something like that. But I mean, he's gonna have to fib something.
He's gonna have to do the preposterous, like, we don't talk about basketball when we're together, like some kind of ridiculous thing that's clearly not ever gonna be true. Exactly. Like he's gonna have to say that. Right. It's crazy. All right. Meantime, like if Maverick wants an edge, bet against the Wizards because it's a great bet. They got rolled again last night by Orlando, who's actually suddenly good now, at least early in the season. So the Bram and Callow pick has worked out. They got a couple of players that have worked. So good for them. They're a nice story here early in the season. And the Wizards are, I don't know. I'm just a sucker. And maybe I mainline sports too much. I watched a good amount of it last night because there was nothing else on that I wanted to see. So I had it on for a little bit. And they are as non-competitive at times in stretches of games that you would expect. And it's laughably bad. I mean, like really laughably bad. Like actually the first half, they were kind of with them, like they were down whatever, 6, whatever, but they were with them and they looked like they were running an offense. And then there were periods of time in the second half where they just become completely, utterly non-competitive. Don't stop the ball. Don't play defense. I saw some quotes from Kuz where he's like, we can't stop a stop sign, stuff like that, like ridiculous stuff and all that stuff. And then this article came out today and I'm not surprised. And not that I'm not going to lie to you. I haven't watched a ton of them because it's so bad. And then you see the clips of them and they just seem like this just not serious professional basketball that's happening right now. It's like the Washington Generals. It's like hard to watch this. But this article came out on SB Nation, and this is incredible. Under the headline, Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma are the NBA's worst and funniest 1-2 punch, comes this. The Wizards are a profoundly unserious team being led by the funniest 1-2 punch in the NBA in Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma. That much we already knew, but the reality of what they're doing is beyond impressive. Net rating is arguably the best way to measure a player's individual impact. It's a pretty simple metric. If you score more points than you allow while you're on the court, then great. If not, something's off. The Poole-Kuzma pairing is something else. Being at the bottom of, they show this chart in their last of duos on the court and net rating. It says being at the bottom of the chart is bad, but my goodness, the reality is so much worse than even the graph shows. According to Basketball Reference, Poole and Kuzma are combined minus 32 on the season in net rating. And you dig a little deeper and it gets worse because they have combined for 43 turnovers due to bad passes, 31 shot attempts which were blocked, which we get to see every single night with Poole doing these crazy things. They both allow 122 points per 100 possessions defensively. That is a lot. Okay, I'm not a huge NBA stats nerd, but 122 per 100, you'd be heading towards record terrible outcomes if that actually lasts for an entire season. So basically what they're saying is this is utterly absurd. And then they point out this, they're paying them a combined $53 million, which is more than the next 5 highest paid players combined.
Great. Awesome. Fantastic.
I mean, you don't have to have the stats or the analytics to tell you how bad they are. Just go watch. But it is, when you read it, it's even like, wow.
Not great.
This is terrible. Terrible.
They told us they would be bad now. So, I mean.
They did. So I think we're at the point now where we go. Don't we ask this question now? Do you move one or both this year?
Oh, yeah. I think you have to. Yeah, for sure. I think Kuzma will actually garner some attention because it's not a rental either. Like you'll get.
I think the only people, for some reason, they love Denny. Like, so they're going to keep him for some reason. And like, listen, I'm trying to protect my guy and all, but like I don't see superstar here. Like I'm not an idiot. I don't see superstar, but they really, 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 really like him and think he's a core part of it. Yeah. Koulibaly obviously is their future. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. So he's safe. I would hang on to Kispert for now, for now. You don't, the only other, they had some big man playing last night I'd literally never heard of from college or pros who was shooting free throws. And he was wearing number 97 or something like that. I'd never heard of this person was playing last night, but they can't get rid of Gafford because then they wouldn't literally have a front court player. So they have to hang on. I think they have to hang on to him. I think. So we're moving those two, right? Because we're at the point where this is utterly ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I think Poole, unfortunately, I don't think he's movable. Like, unless he actually gets back to a normal pace, like they're already calling.
He has to play like a normal person.
Yes, like
which he doesn't do.
Right. So it's like they might be stuck with him until the offseason, until maybe someone decides to be your Huckleberry. Kuzma, I think, will will garner attention if they want to move him, but we
undoubtedly.
We don't know if they actually
What are you going to get? But don't at me with 1 second round pick because I don't want to hear it.
It's your favorite trade.
I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear that he's going back to the Lakers now to play with Rui and LeBron for a second round pick. I don't want to hear that.
Exactly.
Winger, don't tell me that one. All right, I'll be right back. Very much the show. ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. This song obviously tugs at the heartstrings, and I guess Callow knows that we're going to talk about the Capitals here because we started playing this during their championship run. What is it now? 5 years ago? Is that
5
right?
years.
Is it 5?
Yeah.
5 years ago when they won their Stanley Cup, and we started playing Toto's Africa. And I don't know why. Why did we start playing it? And then they started winning, and it was like, we have to just keep playing it. And I also love Toto's Africa, which also happens to fall into Throwback Thursday. Came out in 1983, was on the charts during the Super Bowl week, and we chose 1983, the Super Bowl week of 1983, because that was the first Redskins championship where they defeated the Miami Dolphins, who are the opponent this weekend at FedEx Field for the Commanders.
I want to say we played it when the day that they won their first game against Columbus, or one of those games where it started the run. Like the thing people forget, they lost the first 2 games of the first round,
right.
And everybody was panicking that they were going to lose again. And then they went from Philip Grubauer to Holtby, and I want to say it was one of those games. I played it going into our cap segment, and then I was like, I'm just going to do this. And then, of course, the rest is history because they go on and, go on the run of all time, and it's still amazing.
It is the run of all time.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm superstitious too. When things are working, you just don't get away from it. And then Callow and I have the most pride we have in all of it is someone at the Capitals heard this because they played it at the parade.
That's right. Yes.
They played this song at the parade, and there's no way that's a coincidence.
Yeah, because it's not.
There's no way that was a coincidence.
It's not some big pump up jam or arena rock. It is definitely a little obscure to play at a championship parade at what time was it? 10 or 11 in the morning on whatever day of the week it was. So yes, somebody definitely got wind of that. And yes, I agree. That was one of my favorite little moments of the parade day that I remember.
And then so for this year, they've had 2 what I would call their best wins of the season. They shut out the Golden Knights when they were here.
Yep.
And then last night, that team had the fewest losses in the NHL to this point with 3. And they won 2-1. They had a great goal from Connor McMichael, who swatted one out of midair.
Yep.
They got a lucky break on a goal that got called back last night. But they won 2-1. I saw all the quotes from everybody. I thought my favorite one was Charlie Lindgren, who was in net last night, who basically said there were no passengers on this one.
That's
Everyone had to be locked in to do it. So it's the sign that, we got our team back maybe here early in the season because they won a game like this where they're openly admitting we all needed to tug on the same rope, and we did last night, and we ground out a very good win on the road against a very good team.
You're Ron Rivera when it comes to the Caps. You doubt what I say for like a week or so, and then you get on board. This is exactly what's happened. I was trying to say to you like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, like what I'm seeing, it's legit. It's not perfect by any means, especially because of the power play. My God, like that needs to be fixed, but I am seeing the signs that I need to say that, hey, if you get into the postseason, you and I know it better than anyone else that anybody can win this thing because hockey is chaos. As soon as the playoffs start, it's chaos. And they have a nice mix of veterans and a nice mix of young guys playing. And last night was a perfect example of that. By the way, with Connor McMichael, the way he played last night, he had a goal. He had an assist on the Mantha goal that was silly, by the way, at the end of a shift that he was out there for like a minute, whatever it was. The Kings have one of the best 1-4 centers in the entire league, and Spencer Carberry did not hesitate to put McMichael out there against all of their guys. He held his own. This guy's having nights, Bram, where it's like, oh, he's like showing at times he's the best player on the ice. So I'm just so excited that McMichael is making that next jump because I think it was discouraging last year when Laviolette wasn't even playing the guy, or when he played, he was playing 5 minutes a night, and what good does that do for anybody? So seeing what is happening with them, and that line, by the way, that's the line to watch. McMichael, Mantha, and Alexi Protas. That line is just clicking on all cylinders right now, and it's a nice mix of everything. Mantha and Protas are 2 big guys. Protas uses his size and his speed. Mantha's starting to use it a little bit more and confident, and McMichael is just the playmaker and the facilitator right now. I love that line. And as of last night, too, as you mentioned, Lindgren, I'm telling you, is the best goalie on this team right now. They're going to need Kemper eventually, but Lindgren is the one that's keeping them afloat. And for all intents and purposes, kept them afloat this whole entire month of November. He's been amazing, and I don't know what they would do without him. So luckily, you'll get Kemper starting tonight, and then you'll get Lindgren on Saturday against Vegas, and we'll see how that goes.
Well, I mean, this harkens back to 5 years ago where people forget this part. Braden Holtby was not playing particularly well that year.
He had the yips, yeah.
He had the yips, and they had to come back to him in the playoffs and then had the moment of all moments against Vegas.
Exactly.
So, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But, I didn't catch a lot of these late puck drops, and I'm sick. So, they're killing me. But I woke up this morning and then kind of mainlined all of the reaction and all that stuff from it because it was a good win for them. I mean, off of the start of the road trip where they lost to a bad team 2-1, off of a game where they readily admitted they just didn't show up for, so I was like, because you're actually playing a good team on the road a couple days later, but they showed up, they played hard. I guess we'll see what we get tonight. It's back-to-back out there, but there's no travel involved because they're playing in Anaheim, but still, back-to-back West Coast is tough. Third game, 4 days is tough. So it's a big ask.
Two caveats. One, I still stand by the San Jose film. Like, if you go watch that game and I didn't show you the goals, you would think the Caps won, and I still stand by that. And I think that was a testament last night that they took that momentum and beat one of the best teams in the NHL. And then for tonight for the Ducks, I'm once again, like, if you've listened to me talk about the Caps the last couple of weeks, Darcy Kemper has to be better. And this is a night where I look at him and go, dude, your whole team worked their ass off and got a huge win last night. Show up big. Make some big saves. I think that's my one gripe with Kemper. He's been good, but I don't get the signature saves out of him that I've gotten out of Lindgren this year. Last year, we didn't get it out of Kemper a lot of times. He had a couple good games. Kemper has been good, not great, but hasn't flipped a game. Tonight's a night where I look at him and go, you need to step up and help your teammates out a little bit. Granted, the defense needs to stay solid as they've been, but I look at a night like tonight, like an opportunity presents itself for Kemper to say, hey, man, you can get the whole room back behind you, and all of a sudden it's you and Lindgren. Doesn't matter who we're playing. We can win any game. So I'm with you. I don't know what we're going to get. It's an old team, of course, with the Caps, but the Ducks aren't exactly amazing by any means. There's one other thing I want to point out from last night. Alex Ovechkin, in a game that he was not suspended in or thrown out of or got hurt in, all of those aside, played the least amount of ice time last night that he has in his entire career. And so they won like that. And I'm saying here, Carberry, this goes back to the beginning of the season. He has not been afraid to make some of these really hard decisions, and I'm not saying I love it by any means, but there were no power plays, I think, for the Caps. If they did, they might have gotten one. My brain is scrambled from the late nights, but there were not a lot of special teams play, so he didn't play on the power play. Look, this might be our first little taste of, hey, man, take it easy. Whatever you're going through, I don't know if he's banged up injury-wise. He only skated for a few minutes in morning skate yesterday. He took a maintenance day the day before. Like, I don't know what's happening with Ovi, but I will say this. Carberry seems to at least have his pulse on what's happening in these games and going, I can't risk putting you out there just to cherry pick from the office. And he's picking his spot to play Ovechkin. He was out there when they pulled the goalie, which is perfectly fine. I'm very happy with that. That's what you should do. But it's worth paying attention. The guy did not play as many minutes for the first time in his career. I forget what the exact number was, but it was the lowest of his career. Yeah,
they have a huge year. I think the Buffalo Bills might try to hire Spencer Carberry. Might have to think about it.
Exactly.
Think about it. All right. I'll be right back. Bram Washington Show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. Wow. Callow pulls out Boy George and Culture Club from Throwback Thursday, 1983, which we chose because that's the year the Redskins beat the Dolphins in the Super Bowl for their first Super Bowl championship, the first of 3 over the course of a decade, and probably includes what might be the most famous play in Washington football history, John Riggins' 4th-and-1 run that went for a touchdown and ended up being the winning score in a 10-point victory over the Dolphins. Where was that song on the Billboard charts at that point? Because we're choosing songs from the week of the Super Bowl. Where was that? How high up was that?
Hold on, please. I think it was.
I wonder if that ever got to number 1.
Let me catch you up, though. Toto's Africa was number 1, by the way, that week. So that's funny, like looking at what we did, and that was the week of a championship. Maneater was number 6. And hold on, it is on here somewhere, and for some reason I now cannot find. Oh, there we go. It was at number 21, and that was the peak position.
Peak position 21. All right, good.
To get any higher
All right.
than that. So
I feel better about that. You know, like 'cause as I listen to it, I go, that's okay, but it really shouldn't be much higher than that.
I agree. No,
you know,
I agree
like,
with
listen, I like that the Eagles made a Christmas album. I think it's kitschy and cool. I don't know if I've seen a viral clip now of Jordan Davis singing. Have you seen this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm all over that.
He's got the voice of an angel.
Yeah. The whole for some reason, all of them can sing. Even Jason
They
Kelce
can all sing.
Like, it's crazy. So, yeah.
I got to tell you, like, in my soul, I hate that organization, but they're making it so hard to dislike them. It's hard to dislike Jalen Hurts. It really is. Like, I respect that dude. Like, everything about him, about the way he carries himself, the whole thing, I respect that dude. And now they've got Kelce. It's hard not to totally respect this dude.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is the second Philadelphia team that I've turned on. Like, it was hard to, like, not root for the Phillies in the playoffs, like, because you just get so caught up in their energy. And now with the Eagles, I don't want to see them win because I don't want to have to live with that. But that said, their team, if you just look at them outside of Sirianni, he's easy to dislike. He's very easy to dislike.
I'd agree. Yeah.
But the players on the team, it's hard to dislike Jalen Hurts. It's very hard to dislike Jason Kelce. Now they're doing these albums and they actually can all sing. Like, it's hard to have hatred for that, honestly.
I was trying to think, this is literally like my thoughts this week about them, because everything they do just is so authentic. And I can't think of anyone else that does it better than them. Because, like, you can tell me the Chiefs are popular because of Mahomes, but it's just Mahomes. No one really likes anything else about them. Like, people like Andy Reid, but it doesn't move the needle. And it feels like the Eagles...
Yeah, even Travis is that's a put on. Like, that might be his personality, but he's gone over the top for years trying to be famous.
Oh, totally.
Like, it's so obvious.
I was going to say, he's never really changed, but his best content is with Jason, right? Like, it is not just by himself. And I'm just trying to think, like, the Eagles do this like every 3 or 4 weeks where something crazy happens with them that goes viral because it's just authentic in what they do. Like, did you see what happened with Jason Kelce's wife and the jacket they auctioned off? Did you see what happened with that?
No.
They auctioned off. So I guess there's a famous photo you would probably know, not me, of Princess Diana in an Eagles jacket. I guess that's famous.
Yes.
It's a really nice like leather jacket, old school.
Yep.
They remade it for Kylie Kelce, Jason's wife, and they auctioned it off for the Eagles Autism Foundation.
Wow.
Rob McElhaney threw a bid down for $62,000 because it was Kelce's number. Then he was outbid by somebody for $100,000. And they revealed on the podcast this week it was McElhaney's wife, Caitlin Olsen, who plays Dee on It's Always Sunny. And she's like, you dumb idiot. You're bidding against your own wife trying to win this jacket for you. And so they revealed that, like, it was just, they didn't even talk to each other about it, but they raised over $100,000 for the Eagles Autism Foundation. Like, that's
awesome.
An organic moment that happens that it happens every week with this club in this city, and I'm just jealous. I'm always jealous of their ecosystem up there, and just another example of how that happens with them. So
I know it's going to be hard to believe this, but there was no social media or internet for that matter, but we used to be that. Like, I mean, we used to be that. Like in every way you're talking about it too. Like, there was nobody more organic and likable than Riggo.
Sure.
Like, yeah. And Theismann, the reason why Theismann got picked on a lot was he was kind of like Kelce. He was just very over the top. He really wanted to be famous.
Right.
Everybody recognized a movie star. Everybody recognized he was really good, but it was like, come on, Joe. Because like all the rest of them were the blue collar, were the Hogs. And the Hogs were a likable thing. And the Fun Bunch was a likable thing. And Riggo is as authentic as it gets.
Riggo's Rangers wearing camo on the plane.
He's just doing his thing. Like, he's just being, but he's being himself. It's not a put on. He's actually he's still doing these things. He's tongue kissing his wife at FedEx Field. You know, like, he's still doing these things. Like, it's still that's still happening.
Thanks, Ed.
I know that's what's amazing about it. This is probably what it's not just the winning. I miss that part of it. That's the part I miss too, where we had a team that was like that, where everybody just totally related and liked it, and like, kind of like we all just kind of like we were attracted to it. Like it wasn't just that they won every week. It was like the team had a personality everybody liked. Like that's what the Eagles are right now. It's hard not to like a lot of the things. Sirianni is like, I want him to lose. I want him to lose. He's preening at the camera, the whole thing. But like, it is hard not to like how Hurts carries himself. Like, it's very hard not to that.
Even like we knock A.J. Brown every week for screaming for the ball. Even he's never said a bad thing. He's just hyper competitive. Like, that's the thing with Brown.
He wants to help them win.
Yeah,
it's all about him helping them win. It's obvious.
100%.
Yeah.
What sucks too is like I look at it like this from my viewpoint. This is like their second reload of this because the first time around, not the Super Bowl team, there weren't as many stars there, but they still had likable guys like Kelsey. Foles obviously was likable. They had our guy Torrey Smith on there too. They were likable in a different way. But I look at the first iteration in the early 2000s of McNabb was really likable until he kind of soured. Brian Westbrook, we all kind of rooted for because he was from the area here. They had Brian Dawkins, who everybody loved. Like, they seemingly get it that they know they need a couple of those guys to really facilitate the culture around there, and they've continually done it. And I'm like I said, I'm jealous of it because I don't feel like we've quite hit that level here in my lifetime.
We have it. I mean, like last year, we had a really good locker room here. Partially because of Heineke. Like, the guys really gravitated to him. And the unfortunate part is he's not a Pro Bowl quarterback, and he's not an MVP player, and he can't ascend them to where they want to go. But I do think he was a big part of this whole culture, likability. He was just being himself. It was never a put on. Everybody was just kind of attracted to it. Yeah. He just wasn't, unfortunately, good enough, to take us to those places. But that's what I really liked about last year. Was tough when it ended, because I really liked that locker room. Like, it was the first time in a while that we had this locker room that I really liked. And then he's gone. I'm not blaming that he's gone, but like, we haven't had that this year. And I think some of that has to do with the pressure of new ownership, pressure of a lot of changes coming. Everybody knows it. Like, it's hard to work under those, to sit there and pretend you're not aware of those circumstances. It's hard to do. And then there's the setup of, we're going to hold out giving people contract extensions, whether that's by dictation of the new ownership or the old ownership, or because they're doing it by choice. It's tough. And then you implement like new ways of going about things, and all of a sudden it's a tinderbox. And I think that I don't speak for Rivera here, but I do wonder if he would rethought the whole setup coming into this year, because I think they set themselves up for the possibility of some things kind of going awry by the way that they went about it. And, you hope it doesn't, and you hope that you're laying the groundwork of it being better. But all of those things have added up to, I think, where we are today, which is the culture is better here. There are a lot of likable personalities here, but the setup of how the whole thing was kind of brought into this year of transition, I wonder if he'd like a redo of some of these choices. And we talked about him a lot, like early in the offseason, where I was like, I don't know, man. I think I might pick up Chase's fifth-year option and take that bet, because I don't want him and Sweat on expiring contracts at the same time. And man, there's a lot of guys who are like going to be fighting for jobs, and the defense is a mess. Well, go look at how many guys were fighting for contracts at the same time. That's That's a tough setup. Like, you're asking guys to play team ball, but they got to make their money. I don't blame them. And their agents are going to be in their ears going, you need to do this and you need to do that. And, you can't just listen to everything. And so, was this a little, not doomed to fail, but set up for the possibility of it? Yeah. Did I think their defense would be this bad? No, I never did. But I was worried going into it. The way it was set up wasn't set up for the type of chemistry we're talking about with what's going on in Philadelphia. That said, their roster's amazing. We have a good roster. They got a great one. Right. They got a great one. So it's set up to win big. And it is hard not to like a lot. I'm sorry. I like Jason Kelsey. It's impossible not to like this guy. And more I learn about Hurts, see him, the way he interacts with people, the leadership qualities he shows, and his just general disposition and how he brushes off all the detractors.
Yep.
I like him. It's hard not to like him. I see why they love him. I totally see why they love that guy.
Kelsey's the type of guy that if he wasn't on the Eagles, I would probably have a jersey just because a badass center like that is just something that appeals to me. But yeah, I mean,
first ballot Hall of Fame center.
Yes.
Right. When have you ever seen that? First ballot Hall of Fame center.
Right.
Anybody who doesn't vote for him, you're crazy. You are absolutely nuts. He is the heart and soul of that team. And in fact, I think if he does retire after this year, which sounds like he might, it's going to be a big law. That's going to be. When have you ever heard that before? A center retiring might be something they can't replace.
Sure, no, 100%. It's just he's been a mainstay, and he once again too. It's the personality too. You know how this works too. Linemen tend to not have this. Offensive linemen tend not to have this personality. They don't let you in. They don't express themselves, and what's going to be the lasting image of him? It's going to be him in the freaking Mummers outfit on the parade where he was saying, what did he say? It was something our dogs are hungry or something like that. I forget what the exact thing was, but he had the whole entire city just eating out of his hand that day. Yeah, I mean, it's just you don't see that often with them, and they've had multiple ones. They've had overlap with all of them, and that's I said, that's what I'm jealous of.
I think they're going to win the Super Bowl. I do. I haven't seen them play a full game yet. I mean, that's the craziest part of the whole thing. And I've watched all their games, and mainly because we were playing them, and obviously you have to pay attention to them now because they're one of the best teams. I haven't seen them play a full 60-minute game yet at their best. And I think they could blow people out if they're at their best. And I just haven't even seen it yet, which is why they keep nitpicking them about the offensive coordinator and all this other stuff. If it ever flips around where they start actually, playing to their capacity, like the way Miami has played at certain times this year, they're going to blow some people out because that's what they're capable of.
Exactly.
All right, let me get to this other story. So SI, which... funny, they chose Deion Sanders to put on the cover for Sportsman of the Year off of a week where AI is generating, stories for them, and they had to pretend, that they didn't know that was happening, whatever. So they put him up, and here's one of the stories recapping it said this about it, which I thought was very interesting. Deion Sanders' Colorado football team last won a game on October 7th. The Buffaloes had one of the worst defenses in the nation, allowing 453 yards and 34.8 points per game, and their offense nosedived after a thrilling start, failing to reach 20 points in 4 of their final 5 games. That decline coincided with Sanders' much criticized decision to take play calling duties away from their offensive coordinator Sean Lewis, who has since left to take the head coaching job at San Diego State. None of their 4 victories came against a team that finished. Yeah, none of their 4 victories came against a team that finished with a winning record, and only one team in the nation committed more penalties than Colorado. And yet on Thursday, Sports Illustrated named Sanders the coach of that team that finished 4-8. It's Sportsperson of the Year. So, all right. So there's 2 things going on here. They actually, it sounds like they made Pat Forty, who I think is the real Pat Forty, write something that accompanied the article of why they chose this. And this is what he said. And you'll see why they chose this because it's obvious. And he described this as it was a paradigm shifting, precedent shattering work that he's done for his galvanizing effect of the school. Applications to Colorado have skyrocketed, particularly from African-American students. The Buffalo sold out every football game for the first time ever in the history of its program. The city of Boulder, it estimated that Colorado's first 4 home games added almost $80 million to the city's economy. Ooh. And on college football as a whole, until it was surpassed by last weekend's Michigan-Ohio State game, the Buffalo September 23 loss to Oregon was the most watched game of the season. So he did bring an inordinate amount of attention. And for a month, he was the sports world. Literally in every way possible, he was the sports world. But does that overshadow 4-8 and that it was all a house of cards, at least for year 1? And I don't want to cast judgment on what he's going to be down the road. He just went there. They had won 1 game last year, so they don't have a good program. They don't have a good team. He shuttled off more than half of it because he said, pack your bags, famously told them to pack their bags, which I don't know that we should be applauding, honestly, but like he did, brought in all these new players. He's got the highest percentage of plays played by transfers this year. Mm-hmm. It's noted in this recap piece that only 5% of Georgia's players are transfers in. And oh, by the way, they haven't lost in 3 years. So the point kind of is, the best programs actually don't shuttle players in and out right now.
Right.
The best programs keep and retain their players, and it's getting harder and harder to do because of money and all that stuff and NIL, and I get that. But like Georgia's figured that out, whether they're paying them, finding NIL, or those players kind of like winning, like whatever it is, they're retaining everybody there. Is he the right person to be on is he the sportsman of the year? I think if you're going to pick up somebody in football, I would argue yes. Sure. Who made a bigger impact than him? Nobody.
You're talking college and NFL or just college?
I could name somebody in the NFL that you think maybe had a bigger impact than him this year.
I think I'm not saying he's on the same level. I think just because of the pressure and what is involved, I think you could throw C.J. Stroud out there just because of he's the number 2 pick, and it's a tantalizing storyline that the Panthers might have screwed that up, and he's played so well. They're in the thick of the division. He was AFC Player of the Month, by the way, that was announced today. So that's what I'd throw in there. I'm not saying it's the same as Deion. Deion transcends the sport.
He may be a rookie quarterback that in the end doesn't even make the playoffs.
Correct. No, totally. But we're also talking about
we're having this conversation about a coach who's 4-8.
That's right. And not,
being
by the way,
sportsman of the year.
By the way, not even the most improved team. Northwestern is more improved than Colorado, and they lost their head coach. And I know we can say what we want about that program, but I'm just laying the facts out here. Like, they aren't even the most improved team. So I think there's some argument here. Can I just tell you what my tinfoil hat theory is? Because I don't trust Sports Illustrated, obviously. I don't think anybody should trust Sports Illustrated.
Oh, they've ruined that.
I get it. They've ruined that. I get it. They employ some of the guys we love, like 40 and a couple others. But do you know what's coming out this week and next week? I forget if it's this week or next week, honestly. Do you know what is hitting the airwaves on Amazon Prime?
No.
The Deion documentary.
Oh,
and so
yeah.
I think this is a full-blown, hey, Sports Illustrated, we know you're a journalism, entity, but we know you're hurting, and you're hurting for some publicity, you're hurting for money, but here, why don't you just take this briefcase as this Amazon, or as I say Amazon, but as this Coach Prime documentary launches this week and next week. Why don't you guys just take this briefcase of money here, name them Sports Person of the Year. Everyone's going to talk about it, and then guess what? When the documentary comes out, everybody's going to click onto Amazon and watch the movie or watch the series or whatever the hell it actually is. That is what I'm thinking.
If you're a full-on cynic, that in that documentary there's an advertisement for SI.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely there is. So that's where my tinfoil hat is here, and I'm not saying it's, the documentary is going to be bad by any means, but that is what my theory is here. There's going to be a documentary about a 4-win Colorado team. I'll be interested in it because, of course, it's Deion and we get to see some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. But, I'm not buying that this was authentic in any way. By the way, I just pulled it up. December 7th is when it premieres. So we are literally talking a week from now.
A week.
That it premieres. I'm telling you, I don't trust SI, and I think they took the bag from Amazon on this one. This would not shock me one bit. I will hear the argument. I'll hear your argument, and I'll hear what they're trying to say. But Sports Person of the Year, I don't know, man. I'm not buying it for a 4-win team. I know Deion's huge, but he was huge before he went to Colorado, too. I think, we already knew he was a superstar. We knew he was great where he was at before. I don't buy it as Sports Person of the Year. That's all. That's all I'm getting.
The editor-in-chief is a guy by the name of Stephen Cannella. I believe he's not a robot. He said this: there wasn't much discussion about changing the pick as Colorado's season went on. We, of course, were impressed by the Buffs' performance early in the season. The entire country was. But our choice and the story we're telling about Deion is about more than wins and losses. The reasons that he's our pick holds is regardless of their final record. So he's going back to, he's been a paradigm-shifting personality for the sport, which I agree with. And we talked about this a lot. He was the epicenter of the sports universe for about a 3-4 week period there. Sure. 60 Minutes went there and showed up. The Rock went there. Game Day, Big Noon Kickoff kept going there over and over and over. They are shifting the conversation about how you build a program, how quickly you can change a program. And he has, had an impact that is undeniable. And he is a star of stars. So I get it. But at 4-8, I don't know. Like, there's part of me that goes, yeah, for a month that was incredible. But like, what about the other 3 months? And oh, by the way, there's no promise that they're going to be any better than this.
Right.
Like, so it's not like, and I get it, it's his first year, so let's be fair to the guy. He picked it's a really bad program. And yes, all those things are true. Like, all that money came into Boulder. All the NIL money, they flaunt it because they're willing to do it. He also just kind of usurped all of the attention away from everybody, and I think it was good for the sport, frankly. But at 4-8, they didn't even have a winning record, aren't even bowl eligible. That's like right. In the end, it's a little hard, and it's hard not to be bowl eligible. I don't know. Like, I don't know whether it's the right choice or not. Now, that said, like, in fairness, if you really think about this year, who would you pick for sportsman, sportswoman of the year? I don't know. Like I saw some people write, like, you should have picked Angel Reese, right? And I'm sitting there going, yeah, you know what's happening right now? She hasn't been with her team for the last 2 weeks because of undisclosed issues with them. Yeah, like, she's not even back in the, so I know nobody pays attention to women's college basketball right now, but that's going on. So if you put her on the cover, her and Caitlin Clark, because they paradigm shifted women's college basketball and women's basketball and women's sports. Okay, I'll hear that out. Well, and one of them won the championship and one was in the Final Four. Like, I'll hear you out. Like, that was a big deal. It got me interested in women's college basketball in a way that I'd never been interested in it before. And the conversations around how those two interacted with each other, lasted. It had a lasting effect, and it was memorable. And I think it's elevated the sport. I'll hear all of that. Well, you'd have the same problem right now if that came out on Sports Illustrated, where they're on the cover and she's, who knows what's going on, not with the team, and they won't say why.
Right. Right.
You know?
Yep. I'm with you. Like, I guess I would have liked to see what the discussion was. You know, like, I think that's where I land on this one. Who else would they have put in? What was the argument? But I think we live in a world where winning is everything.
Yes.
And he's just like, and I get it. I respect everything he's done. But you and I talk about this all the time. When a team is the building blocks or starting the building blocks, that's great. Everybody have fun. Like, that's a great start. 2 thumbs up, man. But until I see it actually come to fruition and you're in the college football playoff or you're ranked top 10, I don't know. I just have a hard time giving it to him off of just like this kind of merit. And this influx of cash essentially is what they're saying. Like, oh, he made a bunch of money. Like, that's why he's Sportsperson of the Year. I think you could also flip the script. He's very harsh with his players. He's no nonsense. Like, he's not old school, but then you flip around, like, go look at the articles written about McDaniel down there in Miami, how he said he needed to act like a father figure a little bit more to Tua, to flip him on the other side, to make sure he's good. And like, I don't know, I'm just saying, if we're talking about impacting head coaches here, I think he could be thrown in there as well. I don't know about Sportsperson of the Year, but it's the same arguments is what I'm getting at here, is that they're making with Deion. You can make it with a couple of other guys. I don't know. It feels icky to me knowing the Amazon thing comes out next week. That's all. Like for me, I think that's my end-all, be-all. I know a documentary is coming out next week, and you conveniently, the week before, are naming him Sportsperson of the Year. By the way, you're naming him Sportsperson of the Year the last day of November. We're not letting the last month of this year play out. That's always when this comes out. So saying, that part's not unusual. I'm just saying. They have to make this choice. And there's one other name that someone pointed out that I was like, maybe this should have been it. Lionel Messi won the World Cup and then went to the MLS. It's true. How about all the money he brought in? Yeah, you want to talk about a paradigm-shifting person. Like, go look at the MLS's ratings, merch sales, money that went into that league, all the engagement that happened for that league by him showing up. I mean, he literally changed the trajectory of the entire league. And they've tried this before with stars, and it has not landed the way it landed with this particular player. Right. And he's off of winning the World Cup for the first time for Argentina since, the 80s?
I don't know, man. Like that feels like the right person to have chosen here.
Go look at what it took to get him here. He gets a cut of all of his merch from Adidas.
Yeah.
He gets a bigger cut than anyone's ever gotten. He gets a cut of the Apple TV money. Yeah, I actually kind of agree with you on that. It's an unprecedented move for him, and he's still a really, really good player. Kind of agree on that one. That's probably a bigger deal than Deion, to be honest.
Yeah, and listen, SI Dubai, which I'm surprised it's not been bought by, will name Live Golf the Sportsman of the Year.
Of course.
Yes. We named Ted Leotsis Sportsman of the Year.
Boy.
Oh,
No
man.
comment.
All right. Yeah, no comment, huh? We beat the Kings, guys. All right, be right back. Bram and Callow, ESPN 630 Sports Capital.